Hello and welcome back to Warhammer. I'm your host Mark. Joining me today we got Christian. I'm never sure if I should say your title that you've given yourself, but then it sounds like I've given you it, but I don't want to be the one giving you these, you know?
You don't want to encourage my delusions of grandeur?
No, but this episode you are the sixth Chaos God, which highly debatable.
Every god after number 4 is debatable, which you'll see in this episode.
Okay. We also got Jordan Haight.
Hello.
Here to bring us the esoteric view as per usual and to blow my mind possibly with some type of religious perspective. Who better to bring on a Chaos God episode, I think.
Yeah, well, I also just want to present the chaos perspective, right? And their point of view.
Yeah. Are you doing...
I think history is written by the victors, and people often are very biased against the realms of chaos.
Are you doing whiskey and Warhammer today? Because then you'll get more chaotic as the episode goes on.
Absolutely. We got some whiskey and Warhammer today. JP Weiser's, same one I had last week. I'm going to finish off this bottle eventually. But today we're doing it on the rocks. So.
Oh, fancy. Okay.
We'll start giving a rating at the end of the episode of how that drink was.
Yeah, interesting. Sure. I don't drink too much. And when I do, it's usually just Riot Punch. And that's just not good for anyone around. That's a young man's game.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
It kills your gains too, because I know you're working out now.
Oh, yeah. Fuck yeah, man. We go hard on the Discord. We got a workout channel there and people just post their gains.
I've seen that. I've seen guys posting their videos, their deadlifts, their terrible form. No, I'm just kidding.
I just posted some pictures of my gym out on the island. I bought some equipment. I got a little treadmill, a fucking Bowflexy type thing, and fantastic. So, but hey, the Discord's a fun place because you get to learn new tricks and whatever. That's my sales pitch for the Discord. It felt natural until the end, honestly.
Until you called yourself out.
Yeah.
Also, come join the Patreon and get ad-free versions of the show for only $2.50 a month. That is cheaper than I think the going rate for coffee these days. So go get your latte and then subscribe to Warhammer on Patreon and help support the show.
Absolutely. And if you are a Patreon member, you can also jump in on the live stream during the live recordings of the show. And we also do call-in guests at the end. So if you are a Patreon, you also get the most exorbitant privilege of being a call-in guest and being on the show.
Yeah, I love it. This episode, I think we're going to have time for calling guests, and I'm sure people are going to have some crazy theories because this episode we're talking about one very loved cult classic-y almost. We're talking about the god Malice, and I feel like everyone who hears about him, they fall in love with him, but we don't know anything about him really. And then the other god we're talking about is the Dark King, which is kind of a newer concept that came out maybe a couple years ago, 3 years ago in the Horus Heresy books. And it's basically a new fifth chaos god that's coming, a god of decay and despair. But I don't want to spoil it too much. But yeah, lots of crazy theories this episode. I've said spoilers a couple times on episodes or kind of when I was writing what I was thinking. This episode doesn't have a lot of canon in it. So there is some spoilers if you haven't read the Horus Heresy stuff.
Especially with Siege of Terror specifically.
The last book. Don't go any further, or just listen to Malice and then stop. But also, a lot of this episode is not going to be from 40K because, like I said, they only have a couple paragraphs on these gods. So I was thinking, what are they like? We're going to talk about the Dark King. If he had demons, what are they going to look like? That would be kind of doesn't mean anything now, but in 45 minutes, it's going to mean a heck of a lot more.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot more speculation in this episode, some debate, some clashing opinions, I'm sure.
Yeah, and it was fun to do these guys after we did the 4 Chaos Gods. And, after seeing how they worked, we talked about I did the episode layouts in the exact same way. Like we talk about their mark, their number, then let's go into their realm. We broke it down in the same way. So even though there wasn't a lot of information on these gods, I tried to break it down in that similar kind of way. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about Malice first, kind of all those different ways, and then the Dark King. But I think we can start with the fifth Chaos God. And why do we have Malice and the Dark King here? Oh, I just realized I didn't put any names down on the notes, but I'll start, and then we'll just keep reading. We'll catch up. That's fine. The fifth Chaos God, Malice, or the Dark King. The Warhammer 40k universe is defined by constant struggle between chaos and order, with the four ruinous powers, Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh, reigning supreme in the warp. But what if an entity lurks beyond them, a force capable of reshaping the ballast of the Immaterium? Some believe that Malice, or Malal, the long-forgotten chaos power of anarchy, betrayal, and self-destruction, still lingers in the shadows, as an embodiment of the chaos turned against itself. Malice could represent a hidden vengeful force waiting for the right moment to rise once more. Could his return herald a new age of war within the warp, where chaos itself fractures under the weight of its own contradictions? Others speculate that the Emperor of Mankind, despite his crusade against the ruinous powers, is on the path of becoming a god himself. Some whispers in the Immaterium already call him the Dark King, a being of divine will forged from sacrifice, suffering, and the collective faith of humanity. If the Emperor ascends, will he become a force of order within the warp, a counterbalance to chaos? Or would his transformation bring a new form of tyranny, one where his psychic presence dominates the galaxy, in ways even the Chaos gods never could? So in this episode, we're going to explore these two kind of concepts. Malice came out a very long time ago. 40k is very old. This came out kind of in the 80s, and it kind of stopped getting information around the end of the 90s. But Malice was originally the fifth Chaos God. And then due to some legal shenanigans, it kind of got retconned and rewritten and renamed from Malal to Malal. We don't need to get into all the logisticals of that. But he was originally the fifth Chaos God, and he might still be around. I like to think he still is. Do you guys Christian, maybe you like him around?
Yeah, I definitely think it's a missed opportunity if they don't ever do anything with him in the future. I always have a hope in the back of my mind that they're going to canonize him. There are little tidbits that imply that he's not completely non-existent. Most notably, the Sons of Malice are a renegade Space Marine chapter who, were followers of Malal. They follow all the same patterns. We'll get into it more about what his iconography and stuff is. So they're very closely associated, obviously, with the concept of Malal, and they're still canon. So
yeah,
the implication there being that they're following something. So
yeah, and if they are kind of retconning Malal, and then bringing in the Dark King, are they just doing a replacement? And if so, why? I don't know. Just a question mark there.
Well, and that's kind of what has happened. They're doing a retcon replacement because in that Siege of Terra book, they start calling the Dark King the fifth Chaos God. So in this episode, we'll let the listeners decide which one do you think is the cooler fifth Chaos God. Which one maybe represents Chaos gods better, as well as an interesting thought to kind of ponder. Do they share similar powers and abilities? Stuff like that. But let's start with Malice first.
All right, let's get into it. Malice, or sometimes called Malal, the renegade god, the parasitic anathema, the devourer of chaos, festers at the bleeding heart of the warp. A force of raw, indiscriminate destruction, Malice is chaos turned upon itself, a being of endless rebellion and self-consuming wrath. The ruinous powers fear him, for his existence is their undoing, an insurgent force that thrives on their might, a parasite that drinks deep from their excesses. Where there is hatred, Malice feeds. Where there is anarchy, Malice reigns. And in the end, even the dark gods will choke on their own blood in his name. The renegade god. There's a name that festers in the minds of the damned, a blasphemy even among the most wretched of chaos's spawn. The name of Malal, the renegade god, the paradox given form. He was cast out by the dark gods, or did he turn upon them in an act of pure defiance? None can say. What is known is that he hates them, and they fear him in turn. Malice is chaos devouring chaos, a god whose creed is a war with no end, no allies, and no mercy. His followers, the doomed ones, are the ultimate betrayers, hunting, butchering, and undoing all who bear the taint of the warp, even as they damn themselves in the process. Other servants of chaos despise them, the gods revile them, and yet they persist, bound by a patron who feeds on their rage, madness, and slaughter. Few take his path, fewer still survive it. None escape it.
Yeah, such a cool god already. Chaos against itself. And even chaos is afraid of this god. And chaos powers this god, as we find out a little later. But to worship this god, it's not very easy. You know, it's a path of the true damned, to follow true chaos. It's very Joker-esque from Batman, where you're just doing things to cause havoc. There's no ulterior motive. You know, it's just chaos.
Some people just want to see the galaxy burn.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I love the concept of him. And like there are all these like sub elements, right? Like you're playing with the concept of betrayal because it is chaos against itself. But you're also playing with like true anarchy. It's kind of strange that a faction called chaos often does fall into its own hierarchy, where you have, you know, like warlords and then war bands, and like there's a very strict hierarchy that typically, like, yeah, the strongest kind of dominate, but it does exist. But this is true anarchy. This is,
yeah,
you know, there are no kings, there is a god, but he's not like,
he doesn't necessarily require worship.
Over you.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah, like this is truly anarchy for anarchy's sake, which I think is more fitting and a good example of like chaos, again, chaos fighting itself.
Yeah, so and even like the word anarchy means without rulers or without kings, in the original Latin. You know, so yeah, if you have like a god that doesn't even need worship, like he just needs you to behave in the most chaotic, anarchic way, if you will, just without structure, without hierarchy, and that sort of feeds his power.
Well, this is the interesting thing about this god, actually. Those actions don't feed him. He's a exact... Yeah. So this is where he gets interesting. He actually gets fed by the chaos gods. When they get more powerful, he becomes more powerful because he was birthed from them. From the chaos of the chaos gods, Malice was formed to turn against them. So yeah, this is another interesting thing about his followers. You know, he doesn't really have any, and even them, none of their actions really matter, which is an interesting thing too for the chaos. Like, none of it matters anyway, so they do it not even for their god because it doesn't affect their god even.
Yeah, again, true anarchy. I love it.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is almost like a weird chaos inception. I feel like
yes, that's what makes it great.
Yeah. I feel like he is he's not the fifth chaos god. He's the top chaos god. If like the other chaos gods sort of create him the way that humans create chaos gods. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and here's the thing, like, while he is powerful, probably the most powerful, he is only as powerful as the 4 chaos gods. So, you know, if they all have level 10 power level, he only has a level 40. So they're all equal anyways, because chaos can never fully claim itself, because then that would be the end of all things, and that wouldn't then be chaotic. You know, there's like almost a little bit of sustainability that has to be involved.
It's like a perpetual motion machine.
There we go. Yeah, impossible, but if you can get it just right, pretty fucking neat.
It's yeah, and that's the thing I love about it. Again, it's just like it's a paradox. Like it, you know, it breaks your brain thinking about it, but it also makes sense, right? Like, yeah, if it's the empowerment of chaos, and obviously when chaos becomes more powerful, the embodiment of chaos will become more powerful, right? Like it just it makes sense, but it also is mind warping.
But it can only become as powerful as the gods that birthed it, you know? Like it all just is.
And on that note, Jack Cober in the chat says, so he asks this question. So is he chaos undivided or chaos completely divided?
All and both.
Yeah. So just like underlining that point that you just made. Yeah.
Christian, do you remember? I'm pretty sure you were on the Puerto Rabo episode where we were talking about.
Yeah.
We had a
Divided.
What was the other term?
I don't
we
remember
had?
what you called it. Yeah. I can't remember.
I remember that being
It was
good.
a cool concept.
And maybe the chat will remember, because I like that breakdown better. But yeah, like this is not
Unbound.
This is not
Liar in the
chaos. Oh yeah,
Unbound. Yeah.
Unbound. So this would be chaos unbound, where chaos undivided. It is the 4 chaos gods coming together. They're not divided. But yeah, the unbound.
As the name implies.
Yeah. The unbound is like you're not bound by any of that stuff. You're just outside of it. But yeah. Cool.
I don't understand why. So kind of going back to a comment you made earlier about Malice and, being an IP issue that made him ultimately disappear. But you can't own the concept of anarchy. So I don't know why they can't just like change the name and just run with the concept,
Yeah.
Like it's not impossible to reinsert this.
Well, especially with like
some capacity.
GW, we went from Space Marines to Astartes, Eldar to Eldari. Like this is not
right
the biggest hurdle for them.
Screwing with IPs is what they do best. So I don't understand. Yeah, it's such a cool concept, and I wish there was more done with it. And even if it's like a small thing that's kind of always lurking in the background, that's always the fun part of 40K is when you have these like concepts that are just there to play with. They're not. It's not like Malice is like gonna, the same way like the Tyranids, they could be part of a bigger hive fleet that's coming that we don't know, right? Like those questions. It's
what
part of that.
Next time we get, like we just had Alessio Cavatori. I think I might have said his last name wrong, but he worked at GW back in the day with Rick Priestley doing a bunch of game stuff. Next time we get a guy like that on, we got to bring up Malice, I think, and get maybe some more insight. Like what really happened there? Like, see if we can get anything.
Yeah, it'd have to be someone from pretty far back because I think the whole Malice thing got dropped pretty early on in the 80s. Like you said, so
I got some contacts. I don't want to name drop because I don't want to promise, but I can say initials. No, I don't know his full name. Anyways, anyhow, cool god though, and it's unfortunately that he kind of got dropped, and maybe it's just one of those things where it was like the squats where no one really had the passion for it, or they couldn't quite narrow it down, or it was too wacky. Like even as Jordan's saying, it's a little contrived, don't you think?
It insists upon itself. Okay. Did you want me to keep going?
Yeah, carry on.
Okay, sorry. Okay, let's get into the domains. And he that went before now came last, and that which was white and black in all direction was thrown against itself. Grown mightily, indignant at the words of the gods, Malal did turn his heart against them, and flee into the chambers of space. And no man looked to Malal then, save those that serve that which they hate, who smile upon their misfortune, and who bear no love save for the damned. At such times as a warrior's heart turns to Malal, all gods of chaos grow fearful, and the laughter of the outcast god fills the tomb of space. From the great book of despair. Everything about it, like I love these quotes, and like conceptually, Malal has so many angles. Again, you have betrayal, you have despair, you have like you were mentioning that kind of Joker anarchy-ish, like a warrior who's truly lost all hope or meaning. Like they're not even doing it for the gods anymore. They're just doing it to destroy things.
Yeah.
And then suddenly there's this like shift. Like, yeah, he's following Malal, but also not, but also is, Yeah.
I'm sort of curious, like what name do you guys prefer? Do you prefer Malal or Malice?
I prefer a name that's not the thing directly. Like Khorne is not Rage God, right?
So I totally agree. Yeah, I prefer like Malal over Malice because it's a little too on the nose to just say Malice. So,
yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I feel like just even thinking about this conversation, my brain tends to use Malal as well. but I
Oh,
named
does it?
this.
Okay.
I think so. I think all of us have kind of been using more Malal than Malice, but we'll see as it progresses. You know, we'll get
On that note, though,
the autistic people in the chat can confirm which one we're going. You know, they like doing stuff like that.
it's like an astropathic choir. They all start to get visions and tell us.
Here's the
and expect
answer.
us. Yeah. This is what the
They
emperor
turn
told us.
into war singers and start blowing our brains out.
Jack wants to name him Kevin. I think.
We'll have to think about that. We'll put it to our astropathic choir.
Yeah.
Malal is the howling void where chaos turns upon itself, a paradox of hatred without end. His domain is not conquest, not ambition, but the raw, unreasoning urge to annihilate, even at the cost of his own followers, even at the cost of himself. He is the betrayal of the betrayers, the unmaking of the damned, a force that festers in the heart of chaos and bleeds it dry from within. His power festers in cults of outcasts and renegades, warriors who kill not for glory or gods, but for pure spite, their loyalty measured only by how much destruction they can sow before their inevitable end. To serve Malice is to rebel against the universe itself, to wage war without cause, to embrace the hatred that consumes all, until nothing remains but the echo of slaughter and the laughter of a god who cannot win yet will never lose. Yeah, right? Like, it's the guy who just walks in who's not even playing Monopoly and then knocks over your table and walks away. It's like he wasn't even part of this and he's just wrecking stuff. Something
I also want to echo Mark's point earlier. I think it was Mark saying it's very Joker vibes. I'm definitely getting that with him too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, okay, that leads right into the point I was about to make was I get a lot of Kegarak or Segarak vibes too. The Eldar god, the trickster god, right?
Yeah.
Definitely feeling a lot of overlap. And I wonder too if there is room, again, like it's all speculation, for there to be an overlap in that Eldar mythology. Like, is Kegarak Malal? Could they be the same thing, the same entity?
Yeah, that is an interesting thought. I don't think I like that direction. I think like maybe the only thing that separates the two gods, Malal and Kegarak, would be Kegarak actually cares about the Eldar and has like a goal of protecting the Black Library. There is like a little bit of a goal and purpose. Yes, exactly.
Maybe, yeah, I guess. They could also be two faces of the same coin, right? Two sides of the same.
You know, we have the avatar of Cain, and we also have Korn. You know, there can be multiple gods for sure, and all the gods almost fall into different categories too. You know, like even the fifth chaos god, as we'll kind of go deeper into this, is it really the same thing as the original four? Should it really even be lumped in with those ones?
Yeah, or is it something else altogether?
Yeah.
All right, shall we get into manifestations? Malice does not manifest as gods do. He does not bless, he does not reward, he does not lead. He infects, a creeping madness that turns zeal into betrayal, devotion into slaughter. He is the whisper in the warlord's ear, urging him to cut down his own kin, the pulse of rage that drives the chaos champion to turn his blade upon his patron. His presence is felt in mutinies that have no victors, in wars where no side truly wins, in the frenzied massacres where even the killers know they too will die. When Malal does take form, it's not a figure of dominion, but a shifting nightmare of blades and void, ever consuming, ever dying, the embodiment of war without end, a war against everything, a war even itself. So yeah, kind of interesting. He's not like driven by ambition, perhaps the way that the other chaos gods are.
Not ambition, not territory.
Yeah. Unlike the other chaos gods who remain bound to the warp in their eternal thrones of twisted power, Malal can be dragged screaming into the Immaterium, where his very presence shatters the fragile veneer of reality. He's not an entity that needs to wait for the stars to align or for the tides of the warp to surge. Malal is always ready to be called, to be summoned directly through the carnage of mortal sacrifice. His form a living contradiction of flesh and fury. His followers, desperate and driven by hatred, offer their very souls, tearing apart the fabric of existence to give Malal the vessel he requires, a body, a form to inhabit in the material realm, to bring his reign of paradoxical destruction into the mortal world. In his possession, reality itself bends and breaks, for Malal is not content to simply corrupt. He must unmake, obliterate, and consume everything that dares to oppose him, all while laughing at the irony that even the act of summoning him is an act of self-destruction. Before I get into the next section, do you wonder if, like, I know you say like chaos gods feed Malal, but like, what about even things just like random tragedies that are just random, right? Like someone
Sure.
getting hit by a bus. It's just like senseless. No one caused it to happen. It was completely by accident. Do you think like something like that could feed Malal? Or I don't know, like
Yeah.
reinforce his influence in the world, in the Immaterium?
Yeah, I just wonder, like, I guess ultimately that question is the universe predetermined, or is it actually happening, because in a
Chaotic.
predetermined universe, then none of those things, like, yeah, okay, a bus accident happened. Well, was that the brakes? Was that this person dropped their knife 4 days ago, and now that, and it's all kind of preordained, laid out, you can't really go off the rails. So, that could go either way, but I'm not the type of guy to answer that. Christian is, maybe.
Well, I don't believe in a predetermined universe, but yeah, like do random acts empower a god of randomness? I would suggest possibly.
But like,
But
is anything really
Or is
random?
he
You
or is
know?
he causing those random acts to happen? Like it could be a reverse causation. Like it's not the random acts that's feeding him, he's feeding the
right,
randomness.
he contributes like an element of anarchy to the universe,
Yeah.
and like as that anarchy grows, more chaotic events happen. Like I don't know that we don't have an answer to that,
Yeah.
but I would think that it would be a cool concept and like could play around with like paradoxes of exactly that. Like you can mess with the idea of predetermination and randomness and have
Yeah.
both of them exist at the same time, where this like everything is predetermined, but then this random force exists, and as it is empowered, it starts to create
Literally,
more chaotic events.
like, okay, so yeah, that's almost interesting. So if it's the predetermined and he comes in and he, as we kind of read, he breaks it, he unmakes it, and that's where the
Yeah,
random chance happens.
yeah.
So that thing that would have never happened, it's so unlikely. Like, how the
Now all of a sudden it happens. Yeah,
yeah, because
exactly.
like
You start
he
just
broke
chucking
that.
dice at your dominoes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, that's fun. That almost leads us to believe that the universe is preordained, at least in, or predetermined, I mean, in 40K, but not really. That's just shenanigans.
Yeah. Liar in the chat says Malal is literally quantum probability. Interesting thought right there.
Yeah.
That is an interesting thought. All right, let's get into the sacred mark of Malal. It is a jagged, grinning maw, a void devouring itself. Again, very Joker. Why so serious? A sigil that sees with hate a hatred so absolute it leaves nothing untouched, not even the bearer. To wear this mark is to be forsaken by the gods, hunted by mortals, and feared even by the damned. It does not grant favor, only a curse, the inevitable descent into betrayal, madness, and self destruction. Those branded with it find their fate unraveling, their allies turning to enemies, their triumphs twisting into ruin, until all that remains is an existence fueled by rage and revenge with no end, no meaning, and no escape. Now, the sacred number of Malal, it is 11. It is the blasphemous echo of Malal, a number that should not be, 1 beyond 10, yet not 12. Forever caught. That is funny. 11 is kind of the worst number ever, too.
I love
So-
11.
Really?
Yeah.
No,
I am a patron follower of Malal, so
yeah, it just does not fit neatly into anything.
Gork and Mork, they argue between what their sacred number is, if it's 2 because they're the twin gods of the orcs, or if it's 11 because 1 and 1. But either way, yeah, chaotic number for sure. Doesn't quite fit.
Yeah, Aiden says Malal calls 9/11. Maybe, possibly.
Oh yeah, completely random. Yeah.
Yeah.
or is that a Chinchian plot? Who knows?
Yeah. Fuzz says this, and I kind of
Very
like this
well.
perspective. I see it as Malal feeds off other beings' chaotic choices and causes chaos itself, the same as Korn feeds off violence and causes it. Because I feel like the distinction there is chaotic beings, or beings' chaotic choices. Yeah, like the gods himself doing it. These chaotic choices, these actions causes them. But
The other cool thing too about that is like it's also a reversal, right? Where the chaos gods are empowered by mortals, but Malal is empowered by chaos gods. It's an inversion of what should be.
yeah, and even like another one of those inversions is he's the only god that can manifest in the material realm, which we kind of mentioned, but that's so crazy. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I feel like it's because like his power does like. Oh, I had a good way of describing it. It's since he's powered by the chaos gods and not by the Immaterium, he can kind of enter it through that possession way, as opposed to creating like a feedback loop almost of the chaos gods going into the place where they draw the energy from. Like the chaos god can't possess the human because he draws the energy from the human, so it's like this weird feedback loop, as opposed to Malice, where he's drawing it from the chaos god, so then he can kind of enter other areas.
Yeah. It is the mark of the betrayer, the reminder that no pact is unbreakable, no legion unfractured, no throne secure. It stands as a grim tally of self-consuming war, where those who fought for Malal do so knowing they will slaughter their own and be slaughtered in turn. 11 warriors set out, but none return. 11 oaths are sworn, and all are broken. To invoke this number is to call upon a force that exists only to unmake, a power that thrives on its own destruction, a truth that damns even as it is spoken. The sacred color of Malal. Black and white, opposites that should never coexist, yet cannot exist apart, are the sacred colors of Malal. No vibrant hues, no banners of conquest, only the emptiness of the void and the stark finality of bone. They are the colors of paradox, of a god who is both chaos and its undoing, of a war fought with no victor, only endless betrayal. To bear these colors is to embrace anarchy absolute, to swear allegiance to a force that hates all things, including itself. Black consumes, white erases. Together, they signify the unraveling of all order, all bonds, all purpose, until nothing remains but the silent, grinning abyss.
I love it. Even the sacred color is not a color. Black and white's not a color, Malice. Come on.
It's true. Yeah, you're right.
Fucking idiot. I like this comment by Fuzz again. Tinfoil hat theory. I thought up the other day as well. Malal is pure chaos, and the other chaos entities are fragments of him. And that's almost like a reversal of it, where he's kind of a collective of their energy. But what came first, chicken or the egg, almost? But
yeah.
All right, philosophy. Yep.
Hold on. I'm just looking up on. Sorry, I am still stuck on this Kegarak Malal connection.
I like that for you.
I gotta pursue this. There were mimes that used to be part of Harlequin troops I don't know that they're technically canon anymore. Or if they are, they're like they don't even have models. Like they're very in the background of the lore. And they're obviously being mimes. Black and white would be their colors. I was reading on them. They don't totally fit, but I think there's also not enough on them that there could be, again, speculation or nice to haves or wishes for the future.
Yeah.
If there was a Kegarak connection, it would be a cool way to implement them through the mime role of the Harlequin troop. Is all I was thinking there. But again, the black and white colors.
And maybe since we went back to that and we were just talking about Malice materializing in the material universe, Kegarak is also said to wander the webway and, supposedly the universe as well, talking to the Harlequins. So there could be another connection point where maybe Kegarak is like what happens when he, Malice, possesses a Eldar for that sacrifice. He kind of has this Eldar form. As opposed to like Sons of Malice would be the human form. Beastmen worship Malice Malal as well, which is this weird like abomination creature. Who fucked that goat? So yeah, okay. Fun.
Could be, could be onto something. I'm just saying. I see the threads. I just don't know how they all connect.
Yeah. All right. Philosophy. Malal's philosophy is a mockery of all purpose, a creed of endless betrayal and ruin. There is no grand design, no promise of power or reward, only the certainty that all things must fall, and all who rise must be cast down. To follow Malal is to embrace the lie of loyalty, to wield the hatred as both weapons and a curse, to strike not for gain, but for the sheer spite of tearing down what others would build. His is the final truth of chaos, that there is no force of creation, nor even domination, but of self-destruction given form. Those who take up his cause fight a war with no victory, serve a god who offers nothing but the pleasure of annihilation, and march toward an end that is both inevitable and meaningless, because that's all there has ever been. To be a follower of this god, like you can't have friends. It's so rare to get a whole war band of these, or even a couple people of them together, because how can you when everyone around you is most likely either going to stab you in the back or become your annoying new best friend? It depends what chaos decides for him that day. Who knows?
Yeah. Just as likely to just nuke your whole war band.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of it. They just hate you. They hate everyone.
Yeah. And then the next day, they're cooking you eggs in the morning. Fuck, it's the worst, these guys.
Yeah. Which does tie into how the Sons of Malice operate. The Space Marine chapter, again, they're like very hard to ally with for any external faction because they're just dicks. Like they just pick the worst possible outcome for everyone involved. Like, yeah. Still on brand.
Yeah.
Sorry, Christian. I think the next section's you.
I lost where we are.
Realm.
Oh. Well, that doesn't look like my name, but I will read it.
I know.
Malal's realm is a fractured, screaming void, a wound in the fabric of the warp, where reality tears itself apart and stitches itself back together in endless, mindless rebellion. It is a kingdom of paradox, fortresses that collapse as they are built, armies that slay each other only to rise and do it again. There are no thrones here, no dominion, only the eternal struggle of chaos turning upon itself, anarchy given form. The very air is thick with the spite and madness, a gnawing hatred that seeps into all who enter, driving them to betray, destroy, and unmake until nothing remains. Even the dark gods will not tread here, for in Malal's domain, the only law is that all must fall, even the gods themselves. Yeah. So again, no rulers, no masters. It's back to endless anarchy. It's funny because, like, if there are multiple schools of thought in like real life anarchy, and some follow a more peaceful approach who like reject the anarchists that are more violent, and they're almost like, again, like two opposing sides of a coin.
Yeah, they're like pacifists, and then there's like
Yeah.
revolutionary anarchists.
Yeah,
Or
exactly. And they are like
wild.
completely opposite, but still have
Yeah.
the same goal of like there should be no masters, right? So
Yeah.
just interesting.
Um,
And I'm sure the peaceful ones always hate when people paint all anarchists as
like
like
these just murder
rebellious.
hobos. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Like just terrorist, chaotic
yeah,
elements. But
yeah.
anyways, I digress.
This realm and the way it's portrayed, how we read, is pretty made up on me. We don't really know actually how it's how it looks there. I do kind of like the concept though of like it's almost like a warp gate, warp storm within the warp. When the ships open up that warp portal, it's like they rip open the galaxy. It's almost like a rip in the warp, and if you go in there on the other side, it's like the next reality over, which is just destruction, because it maybe doesn't even send you to the next reality over, is probably a little too much, but if you go in there, it's pretty much just destruction.
Yeah.
I do like the idea though of like a place of contradictions. Like again, like could a place even exist, right? Like
Yeah.
it
Well,
is a place and not a place at the same time.
yeah, and we don't know for sure, and even when it comes to demons, as I'll note, we don't know. But one of the reasons why we don't think there's demons is because he just doesn't have the ability to manifest in that way. Like he can't. If a demon is like giving a god giving up his essence and binding it together and like kind of creating something, Malice doesn't have that ability to create. So maybe the same kind of only destroy. So maybe the same even goes for his realm as well. So it's not even like a place that is even a place. He can't even conjure or manifest anything. So he might not even exist.
Yeah. All right, shall we get into his rivalry with the other gods? It's a inverted rivalry and a dance of hatred, a twisted paradox where he exists only to unmake the very forces that birthed him. He is the eternal betrayer, the one who cannot be ruled, whose very nature undermines the others, even as he feeds from their strength. Korn, with his bloodlust, cannot claim him. Malal is the bloodshed without end, where even victory turns to ash. Chinch schemes in endless plots, but Malal's truth is that nothing is ever meant to be won. Nurgle's decay brings slow, relentless death, while Malal's is the instant, consuming collapse of everything that exists. Slaanesh's hunger for excess is anathema to him. Malal devours, not for pleasure, but for annihilation. He is the chaos within chaos, a force that makes war, not for power, but for the simple joy of seeing it all burn. And in that, even the gods of the warp tremble. It is interesting. I don't know if we're going to get much into the history of Malal, but is there like a moment of realization that the other gods like realize the monstrosity they've created and are like, we have to do something about this?
Yeah,
No,
that's
but you can make it up like right now.
yeah.
Okay. You are, I just, yeah, like I wonder, like, obviously they must be aware of Malal's presence at some point. But, you know, the fact that he is created by them means that he's younger than them. And hypothetically, he has, like he maybe existed prior to their knowledge for quite some time. And I wonder, like, in my mind, I'm just thinking of like you know, like in terms of the lore, like the moment they realize that this entity exists, how do they respond?
It
Do
you
they become chaos united? To fight them?
Yeah, pretty much they do for sure. No, you're so bang on. When we talk about the Dark King, you hit an aspect of him where the Dark King is prophesied, and then doesn't quite happen. But the Chaos God said he is around and in the warp, and he has demons, and they've met him, even though in real space the events haven't happened yet. But because the warp doesn't have any time, would there be that moment of realization of when they was born? Because they were all just in the warp. There's no material time reference,
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's hard to wrap my brain around, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole no different time, I guess, or no time concept kind of throws a wrench in that whole idea. But I don't know. Did Malal always exist?
Yes.
Yes.
But also no.
But also no. Depends where you are.
Oh man, this is a mind-bending episode. All right. So Malal's preference is not for the familiar gods of chaos, but for those who are equally bound by contradictions and fed by conflict. He would find kinship in the cunning violence of Gork and Mork, the orc gods, whose endless war and love of destruction mirror his own drive for annihilation, a war that consumes all, even those who fight it. He would mock the sophistication of the Eldar gods, finding their careful balance of power utterly abhorrent. Cain's endless bloodshed is a worthy enemy to Malal, for the dance of death that spans centuries is anathema to the gods of instantaneous ruin. Where the Eldar gods seek purpose in their warfare, Malal sees only the purity of destruction, the absurdity of purpose itself among the ruinous powers. He is the outcast, the one who would turn on all, even though his own supposed allies for the sheer joy, even on his own supposed allies for the sheer joy of tearing it all down. But here's the thing is like, he doesn't even care if he's on the outside. Like, he seems like the last person who would care about being like the outcast or black sheep god. In fact, it would almost seem like his preference, right? Like,
Yeah.
why would he want to be on the ends in this competing hierarchy between the gods? Like, that's not his style.
Yeah, and even to have a preference, therefore, is not random.
That's true.
To be fair, Jordan, you spotted this. Like, this is an official canon. I wrote this little bit too. I kind of was thinking like what it would be like with all the other gods, but I think you're right. Like he would be way more outside. He wouldn't look at Gork and Mork and be like, well, we both share the sacred number 11. That's kind of neat. You guys both like chaotic violence. Hey, me too. But like, that's not all of a sudden now we're dealing with choices.
So. Yeah. Purge in the comments has a sort of esoteric comment. I still think that the Kronos is the best representative of him. The Chaos Gods were created from him, so he recreates himself to devour them like the snake eating its tail. Oh yeah, that's a high-minded concept there.
Okay. I like it.
Yeah, he's talking about like the Ouroboros. I'm just not sure because there's two Cronoses in Greek mythology, so I'm not just sure if he's referencing Kronos as in time or Kronos, the Titan who eats his kids, the Olympians. But
I mean, Greek language, especially ancient Greek, is kind of confusing because there's a lot of words that are interchangeable with like more just concepts that you wouldn't think. Like it goes from a noun to a verb very quickly. And one example is I've been kind of reading a bit of some of Plato's writings, and like the word for spirit and knowledge is like it's almost the same word. They're very, very similar, and they clearly came from each other. But like the like spirit, and I mean spirit in definitionally as like a supernatural entity that exists outside of our physical material realm, and that's how Plato in the dialogue is talking about it in context. And then I'm talking about knowledge, like the knowledge that you get specifically just like wisdom, right? But those two words are so similar, and there seems to be like some sort of like relationship between the two words that the Greeks had a conception of, but is very difficult for us to sort of like comprehend. And I think because we have very compartmentalized thinking, and I wonder if, like, even like you're saying with Kronos, there's a personification and then there's like the actual concept, but to the Greeks they are like this kind of the same thing. Sorry, tangent there.
Is that like love as well would be a good example of that, the word love, where they have like eros, all those. Okay. Yeah, no.
Yeah, Eros is like a Greek god, but it's also like conceptually I think it's just hard for us to wrap our brains around because we've separated the concepts. So but yeah.
Nice. Well, we're moving on to Legions of Chaos. I didn't know what to call his Legions of Chaos. Technically, they don't exist, but now that I've said that, maybe they do exist for chaos' sake, just to fuck me over and make me look like an idiot. What do you guys like for this kind of Legions of his demons? Like, if we have Slaanesh and it's the Legions of Excess, or Khorne is the Blood Legion, I think. Legions of Malice, Legions of Malal. What's your vibe?
Legions of Malal actually sounds pretty okay. The Legions of,
I don't know. Legion seems too orderly.
The Horde. Let's say the Horde.
Yeah. I would say a Horde of Malal is better.
Horde of Malal. That is good. Yeah. Fuck, I love that. I want to do cultist based on that now. A big like bunch of fucking techno Viking type people.
Yeah, totally.
That's fucking. Well, as I kind of mentioned, Malice doesn't necessarily have demons. Most people don't think he does. So we'll talk about the demonless kind of concept first, and then I did write a little bit about what the demons could look like, but this is close to the canon for sure. Malice's very essence defies the predictability, fixed nature of the other Chaos gods. Where Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh wield vast legions of demons bound to their will, Malice is a force of constant unraveling, a chaotic tide that devours everything in its path, including the very idea of order and structure. His followers are not simple warriors or servants, but renegades, traitors, and the scorned, those who turned against their own kind as easily as they do their enemies. They embody betrayal without reason, an unrelenting cycle of violence and madness that transcends even their own allegiance. There is no fixed forms, no neatly ordered legions, only the chaos of self-destruction. A warrior who serves Malal serves no god but his own destruction, a flame that burns everything, even its own source, until all that remains is hollow, ever-consuming, void of hatred. I love the one line of, Malice is a force of constant unraveling. Yeah.
Some things that kind of spring to mind are concepts like black holes. Like Malal is like a black hole. The other thing I was thinking too, like if he doesn't produce demons, what if he produces anti-demons? What if he's the reason that nulls exist?
Yeah, and that could be a very random thing that like shouldn't have never happened in nature.
Yeah, and nulls are the antithesis of chaos. So he's just out there like creating voids in chaos.
And like even the way he has an ability to kind of like manifest in reality, maybe he is very slightly manifesting a portion of his power or anti-power in every blank that's born. When they're born, it's like there's that completely random chance. I can't even put a number on the random chance of the random chance, you know, but if that happens, then Malice blessed you with some of his anti-warp power.
Yeah, and another thing too with nulls is that they're reviled, they're outcast too, right? And Malal is the god of outcasts and like hatred. Like,
okay,
nulls are the perfect consequence, I guess, of Malal.
Yeah, I love that, man.
There's so much you could do with this. I just like this is what pisses me off. They didn't give me the lore job at GW, man. I would make Malal the new factor.
We were a joint team, Christian.
Yes, I would bring you in as a consultant. Yes.
Oh man. No, I
Personal fluffer. Um,
uh,
uh, now, maybe this is a little off the beaten track, but it's just a thought came to my head. I'm just like thinking about the empire itself, um, and the God King, the Emperor. Like the empire seems like the embodiment of order in the 40k universe. Like they are trying to bring order to the galaxy, bring all the Xenos to heal, bring the whole galaxy under their domain. Do you think that like maybe the Emperor is like the antithesis of Malal more so than even any of the Chaos gods? Or am I just going out on a limb here?
yeah, yeah, I would say so. Because order isn't necessarily good. Maybe there's that little bit where like you can have perfect order, but you might have to kill everyone who gets in your way. But then you will have perfect order. But once you get that state, yeah, that's the exact opposite of chaos. And we even know like the Emperor didn't want um humanity to get involved with warp shenanigans. He wouldn't tell them about it, and that was part of his kind of downfall a little bit. But in so not telling people, he wanted to try to starve the chaos gods from power, and therefore starving the chaos gods, he does starve Malal as well, because without chaos there's no Malal. So he kind of is that antithesis eventually.
Yeah, like it seems like that, but that's
Yeah,
just
and
kind of a random thought.
when we get into the Dark King, we'll and then we did talk about it briefly on our episode on the Emperor himself, about like the Emperor as a god of order.
Yeah.
Um,
which
but
which is very interesting, because that's a very different concept than the Dark King. But
yeah, that's why I'm saving that
yeah,
discussion. But,
yeah.
yeah.
I said there could be demons, but honestly, fuck the demons in what I wrote. Like that, I think, Christian, you nailed on the head with nulls. I think there's no
Yeah.
demons and there's nulls.
Yeah, I that's definitely my favorite one. But let's toy with that idea for a minute, because even Purge in the comments had a suggestion too about demons. Let's suppose that he can manifest demons. Purge says, "What if we have demons? However, they're so chaotic we can. I think he meant can't actually visualize them because our brain simply can't grasp them as a physical form, making them like jinn, from like Islamic and Proto-Arabian mythology." Yeah, I like to explore all the possibilities, right? So let's explore the idea of whether Malal did manifest demons. That could certainly be an option. Like you can't even see them; like they don't take form. They're formless. They could even be like just ideas that float around and like, hey, what is it called? Intrusive thoughts. Like they just float around like intrusive thoughts, which is a little bit how jinn operate actually too. Where yeah, like hey, that sudden urge to punch a child in the face, like throw yourself off a cliff.
Oddly
Right.
specific, Christian.
But yeah, exactly. Like just that whisper in your ear. That's a demon of Malal, and it you can't see it, you can't touch it. It's just so chaotic, you can't comprehend it, and it doesn't actually hurt. Like it's not attacking you. It's not going to kill you, but it's going to make you do something insane.
And it's fleeting too, because as soon as you kind of think it's gone too. It can't fully like formalize
Materialize.
itself.
Yeah. So
yeah, even on that note, like even things like mental illnesses, particularly like schizophrenia, is actually often it is really defined by not just like hallucinations and whatnot that kind of a lot of people think about schizophrenia. It's really like a fragmented mind and a chaotic mind that is like super disjointed and no longer is making like the right connections in your brain. So it's actually like it's like a random making machine. Your brain becomes this just like randomness machine. And that's like what a lot of times like schizophrenia actually that's what's going on with schizophrenia often. And then that'll manifest in like delusions and hallucinations and whatnot, but it's like this very fragmented thing that's going mind that's going on. And yeah, you kind of wonder like Malal's influence on the universe? Is that like what's going on with people? Like they become increasingly psychotic just through his influence. You wonder if someone like even committed themselves to like serving Malal, are they going to become super
Schizophrenic.
fragmented? Oh yeah, over time. Yeah, just by like serving him, because that's just what he does to your mind, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be cool. Like it insanity could be a part of this, right? Like
Yeah.
so disordered and so unmade that even your mind becomes unmade. You're not even a coherent person anymore.
Yeah.
You just exist and just do things.
I
As a
think
true embodiment of chaos. Yeah.
I think the one thing to consider too about like what affects them is like you're quickly talking there about, you know, the brain isn't firing properly. As an electrician, I kind of get that the wires aren't, you know, hooked up, but like that's following like the laws of the universe still, you know, where true chaos, like it breaks it. It doesn't just kind of change it or like make it not
Oh,
work anymore. It's a complete like destruction. There's not even the brain there anymore. Chaos replaced, or Malal placed it with a sheep. You know.
Yeah. Jack in the comments says, so in order to understand Malal a little better, I need to schizophrenia my brain. Absolutely. You should take copious amounts of psilocybin, like ungodly amounts. And
this is
if
not
it
medical
doesn't
advice.
work,
Warhammer Legal is not responsible for any
No,
advice.
they aren't, but we are. That's
Yeah,
what they
and if it
always tell
works,
me.
if it works, come back to us and tell us your
Tell us the
experience.
visions you had.
Yeah.
If you can, if you're capable.
Oh man. The Djinn is a good kind of description of these demons. That I'll read out here. Malice demons are the embodiment of contradiction and fury. Twisted shapes appear, hatred turned inward, forged from the record of every broken bond, every fractured loyalty. Unlike the minions of the other gods, whose form reflect their twisted desires, Malal's demons are imperfect and shifting, a nightmare of endless self-destruction, and that never completes, never settles. They are not warriors, but consumers of all that is, burning through everything they touch in a maddening cycle of betrayal. There are no banners, no ranks among them, for they do not serve. They exist only to tear down. In battle, they may appear as massive hulking brutes or skeleton shades, forever on the edge of their own annihilation. To face them is to encounter war without purpose, conflict without clarity. For Malal's demons do not fight to win. They fight to consume, to collapse, to make every conflict an absurd, destructive parody. You know, there is that kind of route you could go where they're kind of more that shapeless kind of void. The other one I was thinking about, but I don't know if I like it, but it's too close to Korn, is if they're made of just pure fire. Korn and Cheech kind of have those fire vibes, but like fire is truly random and archaic and like unpredictable.
Chaotic.
Yeah, so if you have the demons as like just flame, and then also fire consumes and it also completely destroys. So fire demons would be good.
Yeah, and that is in line with kind of that Jinn. Jinn are either like invisible, they take the forms of other things like animals or people, or they're often described in the Quran as smokeless fire.
Oh, okay, interesting.
So that's very much in the same line of thought. So both examples are cool, but I still think my favorite's definitely the null.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
The null version.
I've always wanted to do some Sisters of Silence, man. I love them. I love their like transport from 40K. Their models with their fur capes are so fucking
definitely
cool.
An underappreciated faction.
Yeah. You know me, I coined the famous we got to put a blank every square mile in the galaxy and that'll get rid of chaos. And I still stand by that, but I think I need to take the first steps of buying models first, little them around the world first, every square mile, and go from there.
Just toss one into nature everywhere you go.
Exactly.
Confusing archaeologists for generations to come. Yeah. All right.
Jordan, what do you kind of like more? Do you like the demons, demonless, kind of demonless with the nulls?
I do like the null idea. I like agree conceptually, like he almost has to be demonless. I don't know. It's hard to imagine what his demons would even be like if he had them.
Yeah.
You know, maybe Joker was a demon.
Yeah, maybe his demons are just the people he makes.
People.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
possesses them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like who knows? Yeah.
But doesn't. Like, it's just exactly that brokenness of your mind, and then you serve him without even like purposefully serving him. Jack in the comments just said, what if they're made of radiation? Like radon? That's a smokeless fire, really. Yes. Don't know that I agree, but
Yeah. The
it's a
thing
thought.
is, as soon as you name it, as soon as we can describe it, that can't be what it is.
Yeah. All right, let's get into the cult of Malal. The cult of Malal is a swarming, fractured beast, a collection of the forsaken and the broken, from the mortal outcasts on the twisted Astartes of the sons of Malal. This is a part where you start the intro for the Black Parade by My Chemical Romance.
When I was.
Yeah. There are no banners, no sacred rites, only the screams of betrayal and the promise of ruin. His followers are not bound by loyalty or ideology, but are driven by a single consuming drive to tear down, to destroy, to unmake everything, including themselves. Mortals fall into his cult not by choice, but by desperation, driven to madness by the agony of the world they inhabit. For the Astartes, the sons of Malal are the ultimate paradox, superhuman warriors twisted into agents of their own undoing, forever at odds with the very nature, turning on their brothers, their gods, and their legacies. To follow Malal is to revel in self-destruction, to embrace the annihilation of all things, including the promise of victory. They are an army without unity, a force of pure chaos, bound by nothing but their relentless hatred for all that is stable and secure. Yeah, just a thought on that too. A concept we haven't really touched on is it's so now vanished in my mind.
I love that.
Never mind.
Happens.
Yeah.
Come on, let's jog it loose. Did it involve Malice?
Something to do with Malice. Anarchy, no. It'll come to me. Keep talking.
All right. Well, normally at this part, we would dive deep into the Sons of Malal because they fall into pretty much the only named kind of servants. But there was quite a bit on them, and honestly, I want to do an episode all by themselves with just them. They have a book. They got a couple comics. I think there's some stuff there. They got a little more information than their god, actually. So the things to take away though for this episode, the Sons of Malice, yeah, they're an Astartes chapter that has signed up to join him. And some of their practices are pretty crazy, some cannibalistic stuff, and it's pretty neat group of guys.
Another faction I kind of think about is a chaos warband from fantasy or Age of Sigmar or whatever. It's all fantasy to me. They're called the Unmade, and they like take off their own limbs and like slowly like replace body parts with like hooks and things. And like they peel off the flesh of their face, I think, or something to that effect. But that concept of unmaking yourself could be something that could be incorporated into some kind of like practice, where yeah, even like the concept of self-destruction stuff, which leads me into the concept that I was trying to mentally pursue there a minute ago. Nihilism we haven't really touched on as a philosophy, but
I was actually going to bring up Nietzsche because I was getting some shades of Nietzsche, but continue.
Yeah, well, that's all. I was just going to bring up the fact that like we hadn't brought it up yet, but definitely like nihilistic tendencies. Again, not all anarchists are nihilists, but there are nihilists that are anarchists, right? So, and that's kind of more the category that we're leaning into.
Yeah, for sure.
But go on, Jordan, if you had more thoughts.
Well, I was just going to say, like Nietzsche himself, kind of the last 10 years of his life, he kind of went mad. There's a lot of his writings that were just like crazy and rambling, and letters that correspondence that he would have with friends that were just like insane. Some people attribute that to his own philosophy kind of led him there. Like he followed it to its very end, and that's where it came. Others might just say it was just typical mental illness, but hard to say.
Some people
Hard to
think
say.
some people think it was syphilis or some
yeah.
kind of dementia too that he might have.
It very well could have been. I actually almost lean that way, but it is interesting. It's a weird like coincidence that he kind of went crazy at the end of his life while espousing the philosophy that he did.
Nihilism, yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of poetic. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
We should do a quick call in here, maybe, because we're going to jump to the Dark King. But before we leave Malice, let's maybe get a quick call in. So first person to kind of get in here. Yeah, it's a cool god, man. Like every time we read a new paragraph, we get this cool, unique concept that you understand halfway through, but by the end of the paragraph, you're like, fuck, everything I thought I knew isn't true.
It's an unmaking of your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. Yeah, I like it though. Like I like that you have to go in sort of mental circles and you keep coming back. You're like, maybe it's this and maybe it's that. No, it can't be this and it can't be that, right? Like you can never really land on anything solid with Malal, which I kind of like. It's kind of cool. It's a cool concept. I have to say, like, there's very few like especially giant fantasy or space epics that like would deal with a concept like this. It's pretty rare.
Yeah. And it is hard to execute, right? Like how you're going to sell Malal models. Like he doesn't have any demons. He doesn't, right? Like, and I think that's ultimately why GW would never pursue it, is because you can't monetize it. Which,
Malal models are made by new people to the hobby or children. You know, those Space Marines got orc arms glued on them, and you're like, why?
Yeah.
Why is that head glued to those just pair of legs? Fucking
yeah.
We got two call-ins. Jack, you're here first, so we'll get you to call it or come up here now. Hey, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hey.
Let me turn down the stream that I have on my phone. Honestly, I wanted to say a really good way to sell Malal models would just be the fact of not selling them at all, and it'd be a great way to have named characters that you can kill off. That we don't have any of that. Continue. You were gonna breathe and say words.
GW does the opposite. They break into your home in the middle of the night and they put armies under your tree. You can't buy them. They just randomly show up and then they're yours.
Or the reverse. The reverse is you pay them and you never get anything in return.
I was about to
Infinite
say
money hack.
They sell them online, but when you buy them, they never come.
It's so close and so far away at the same time. Just like my understanding of Malal.
Yeah.
No, but I genuinely everything you guys are saying is just it builds to the understanding of who Malal is while also just completely contradicting everything you guys said in the last paragraph that you read.
Yeah.
And
he even contradicts all the other gods in the way they operate. Like, we did all these god episodes and we learned a bunch of operational manual rules, but he contradicts that as well. Like,
he just does everything in his own way, and it's awful, and I hate it. And he might be my favorite.
You sound like a follower of Malal already.
Yeah, no, it's great. He sucks, and he doesn't make any fucking sense. But I vibe with it.
Okay, well,
so you obviously you run in the camp that Malal is canon then.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. There has to you can't call chaos when all of them have all of these goals and ideals and gains that they want. Like they don't want all of themselves to succeed and not succeed at the same time. You can understand the four chaos gods. Like you can see that they hate each other for these specific things and they have these specific desires. There's nothing really truly chaotic about it except for the fact that they're kind of just dicks. With Malal, there's you can't grasp it. at least with all the other chaos gods, even I like the theory that we had where it's just he has demons, we just physically cannot comprehend them. I like that makes sense to me in some sort of way, right? Where we can visualize and comprehend all of the demons from the other chaos gods, and they're not really like obviously you'll have a mental breakdown upon seeing it, but you're not having a mental breakdown because you saw it. You're having the mental breakdown because you've comprehended it for half a second, and it's incomprehensible.
I picture like you just look at the Malice demons and your eyes burst into flame because you've seen something that like just it can't handle reality.
Or it's like one of those things where once your like consciousness perceives its existence, it like ceases to exist. You know, like once you can categorize and observe it like in a scientific way, then it just like dissipates in the palm of your hand like sand, you know, like it's just like impossible to ever get a grasp of, if that makes sense.
I fully that's kind of where I was trying to go with that. Like it doesn't make any sense at all, and that's what makes it Malal.
Yeah. Do you prefer Malal or Malice?
I prefer Kevin. I'm going wholeheartedly into that one.
Okay. The chat isn't always right. The astropathic chat.
Listen, right? I feel like we could come together and agree that it's Malal or Malice or whatnot, or we could be truly chaotic and truly worship Malal by making his name Kevin.
That's true, actually.
Yep.
You ain't wrong.
Yep, you won me over. But now that we all have purpose, we can't do that because now that's not chaotic.
Oh
so.
no!
Ruined it already.
Damn it. Cool. Well, cool. You got any other little thoughts about this god?
I've been having a debate this entire time in the chat. I genuinely think he's mainly just a god of freedom rather than a god of chaos or like any kind of thing like that. I think that's
a great point. Yeah.
Like he has a goal, and the goal is to be chaotic. And I feel like that.
But if the goal is to be free, it's not necessarily to be chaotic. It's just to be like not predetermined.
Yeah, and that falls into, I think Fuzz mentioned in the chat too on that same point, was that some people would consider them the same thing. Obviously, not everyone, as Jordan's saying, but like ultimate freedom is freedom from consequences, freedom from everything, right? Freedom from responsibilities, consequences, leadership, everything. So then it is a form of chaos or anarchy. But they're not necessarily mutually exclusive concepts either.
You know, yeah, that's fair. Fuzz was honestly turning me to that point because Fuzz is really awesome and amazing. And I'm sorry that I took up his time.
No. Well, now that we've said that, maybe we need to have him in here. Look at this. He's on right now. Who can stop us?
Nobody can stop us. I'm leaving the room
Ultimate
now.
freedom. No one can stop us.
Exactly. Yo, Fuzz, what's good?
Typically,
what are your thoughts?
4 max, 5 now.
Right. I appreciate those kind words. Also, thank you very much. The discussions in the chat was delightful. Delightful and chaotic, as it should be.
As Malal intended.
Yeah. Do you like the idea of him having gods? We haven't mentioned the nulls with you guys yet, and I don't think I've heard anyone else and like on the internet ever bring that point up. What do you think of that?
I thought the null thing was a very, very interesting idea. Not one that I think I would have thought of. So that was fantastic. Yeah, because like you said, the introduction of the nulls into the Imperium, you know, it did kind of establish some of that order. It added a little bit of chaos into there because, like I said, like everyone who's around them feels uncomfortable. It just nothing vibes right anymore. And like I said, they're outcasts, which really fits with Malal's vibe.
And even as far as hated, like I hate you and I don't even know why, but I just do, right? Like that's what nulls do to people. So it's very Malal, very Malice.
Oh yeah.
What other kind of cool thoughts did we have? Questions. Do you think he has a realm? Does he have that ability even? We hit on the demons, and we pretty much all agree no demons necessarily.
Yeah, I would.
What about a realm?
Yeah, I would agree. Definitely no physical demons. So my thought of Malice or Malal, I do prefer Malal, but for a realm, kind of rolls into my tinfoil hat theory of all of the Chaos Gods being a split off from Malal. So Malal's realm would just be the warp, just all of it forever. Like he would be sort of like the primordial singular entity that existed in the warp, and through the I guess for lack of a better word right now, like interference of the psychic races in the Immaterium, sort of like shaved off those pieces of him and turned them into what we refer to as the Chaos Gods, giving them, defining them, giving them form, so they're no longer that functional part of like the whole. Like, because Malal encompasses like all of them together form a much more complete picture of chaos. Like Nurgle, the cycle of life and death, nature is an extremely chaotic system. Violence and bloodshed and war is extremely chaotic, while like the plotting and scheming isn't necessarily itself chaotic. It leads to a lot of chaos. It causes a lot of chaos, and then everything, all the excess of Slanesh leads to that unraveling of like your life, of your society. How many people's lives become unraveled by addiction and abuse and things like that. So I had drawn these from like other games and stuff like that, like World of Warcraft and Diablo, where there are these like holes that get split up in different ways, and like divided up into more like concrete beings. But yeah, there's
and
kind of jumping off of that too, Fuzz. Even the concept of the same, like we always talk about how there's the tension within the Chaos Gods, right? And even that concept that they are all on quote unquote the same team, but they're really not, is itself a contradiction. That, like you said, looking at them as a whole altogether causes that natural chaotic element, because you have these contradictions all together on the same side.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
So
yeah, maybe even another kind of way to look at it, more mechanically, would be if the warp is all Malal, and there are parts of it where people conquer the energy and it's no longer true chaos. Like, when you're flying a ship through the warp and there's just energy whipping around and lashing around, that's Malal. Because Malal also is the biggest of the gods. He is the combined energy of all of them. Like you're kind of saying, like he's the original warp, but then these gods, they get these aspects, these fragments, these realms that they manifest and can kind of control and turn peaceful, not peaceful, but
they make order out of the chaos.
Yeah.
At least more order than like the pure chaos, not quite to like Imperium order, but yeah, like
the Emperor.
Yeah, so I think that kind of even plays into like how the warp is actually structured then even.
Oh yeah, because time doesn't function, in a linear fashion. Time is chaotic. Space is chaotic. You don't always exit the warp where you intend to. It takes an extreme amount of imposed order, like with the Astronomicon, to be able to use it in any functional way for material beings.
Yeah, that's a fun thought. Yeah, that's like definitely one of those chicken or the eggs question, which one came first, but I like it, man. Like, I think, both answers are right, both answers are wrong, and that's the beauty of it.
Like there is, I had mentioned this in chat, but just it's impossible to define this, because it's, humans trying to put our understanding of the world and our understanding of our experience as, linear time beings, mortal beings, onto a concept, and it just doesn't work. And it should be okay that it's unknowable, and that we just should be able to accept that.
Yeah. Very
Yeah.
cool. Well, Fuzz, thanks for calling
Yeah,
in. We'll
absolutely.
carry on to the Dark King, but maybe we'll talk again at the end of the Dark King. All righty. Well, that's that. Any
Hold on,
closing
before
thoughts
we,
for? Yeah. Speak
yeah,
your piece, my friend.
sorry. I just can't help but think that this is what the great philosophers of Colchis sounded like, all sitting on, their stone benches and contemplating the nature of chaos, and then eventually leading to their own damnation. A bunch of chaos scholars over here.
Yeah. Definitely light some incense after this episode, do some cleansing rituals, all that kind of stuff for sure.
And then just the last thing I just wanted to mention is maybe the ultimate form of chaos is whether or not Malal is or isn't canon, even. That is the truest contradiction we can
fucking hell. Isn't that just the case?
Even real life. Yeah.
Well, now I'm okay with what happened to him. I wanted him back, but once again, you brought an amazing point to the debate and you won it. Jordan,
expression.
Yeah. Do you got any closing thoughts there on Malice before we jump to the Dark King?
No, we can we can jump into her there.
All right.
All right, the Dark King. He's a theoretical fifth chaos god. One that could have emerged had the Emperor fully embraced the warp during his battle with Horus. If the Emperor had succumbed to the temptations of chaos, his rejection of his original purpose and embrace of godhood would have led to the birth of a new force. The Dark King represents the drive to complete destruction without reason or aim. So here's the prophecy about the king. Foreseen by both the Eldar and humans of ancient times, this prophesied entity is believed to emerge when the time is right, as time itself is warped within the chaos realm. The ruinous powers insist that the Dark King's servants and dominion already exist, waiting for the inevitable moment when this decaying and corrupting force will manifest fully. Its influence grows quietly, unseen but ever present, like a creeping darkness that will one day consume all. So like, what would be the Dark King's sort of like defining features or characteristics? Because all the other gods, including Malal, have their own sort of like unique characteristics. But is there anything given by GW about him?
Yeah, so from what I kind of understand, he represents two things. Primarily despair and decay. And when we talk about the ascension to the Emperor and why this is, we'll learn a little bit more, because it's interesting. Like despair and decay, like fear, that's something that we haven't. There's no god for that, but it is like a primal thing, and we'll find out why that's an aspect. And then decay, you think that would fall under Nurgle, but this is a different type of decay, as we'll come to find.
Yeah, like you think of it more like because Nurgle is like the cycle of life and death.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this is like an ultimate decay to nothingness, to zero, to like the heat death of the universe. Like I said
like
in the Nurgle episode.
Entropy.
Yeah, like the final oblivion of everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
But like Mark said, we'll get deeper into it here.
Gotcha.
So let's.
That gives me a bit of a grid for it then.
Yeah, and what's interesting too about the Dark King, like maybe it's the Emperor, maybe it's not, but we do think that the Emperor is a likely candidate, and we'll talk about the ascension of the Emperor to the Dark King. The whispers in the dark spoke of many possibilities. Perhaps it was the chaos-tainted Horus, or the demon Samus who would ascend. And this is in 30k times, by the way, during the Horus heresy. Yet in the end, the Dark King was not a traitor, but the Emperor himself. In the heart of the Siege of Terra, when the Emperor felt the full weight of Horus's corruption press against his spirit, he knew the fight was lost unless he reached beyond his mortal limits. Desperation clawed at him. He drank from the warp, but not as he had before. This time, he was no mere man. He became something else entirely. He became the Dark King. So we got this climactic battle. Like, this is the big bad, most mythic battle in the universe, where Horus, the Emperor's favorite son, and the Emperor battle each other. And Horus is all hopped up by all 4 Chaos Demon gods, amping him up with their demon juice. And the Emperor confronts him, and he's not able to quite deal with them. But then he deep drank from the warp. His power surged like a storm. An obscene sphere wrapped in the crackling lightning scorched all in his wake. His presence obliterated the custodians, turning them to charred husks, their bodies still twitching as they clung to life as long as life that long since fled. The Emperor did not care. In his wake, the inevitable city trembled, and all things that had once stood in defiance, demons, the lost, and even the traitor space marines, fled in terror, undone by his raw, unfathomable power. Let's stop here for a quick second. Man, this is so different than what happened 20 years ago. The lore has changed many times on this battle of what happened, but one of the more predominant ones is, the Emperor and Horus are fighting, and the Emperor thinks Horus is still in there somewhere, and he won't hold, or he's holding back. And then a Custodes walks into the room, and Horus just flays him alive, just kills him, mutilates him, whatever. And that's when the Emperor flicked that switch of like, oh, Horus is gone, I gotta amp this up. And that's when he finally kills him. This is an interesting twist where like the Emperor killed this guy, all these Custodes around. They kind of flipped it on us, this like turning moment of like, what have I done?
Yeah, I have a lot of mixed feelings. I'll maybe save my opinions more for the end here, but they do that a lot because the lore was already set. Like we know what is supposed to happen. That they're trying to find unique ways to like keep surprises coming, which isn't always my favorite strategy. And the whole concept of the Dark King I struggle with too. But I won't get too much into it until the end here. The Dark King does carry some elements of malice in him, like that ultimate destruction of chaos, kind of being like it something that just destroys everything, right? Like that's like that malicious aspect of him.
The Dark King is more nihilistic, but still like Malice has that nihilistic aspect. But the Dark King's even more so.
Yeah. I'm not saying they're the same, but definitely an aspect of Malice comes through with the Dark King for sure, which I think is their way of kind of bringing back the concept without bringing back Malice, maybe.
Yeah, possibly. Hey, Yet, as he ascended, unknowingly becoming a god of chaos, the Emperor's heart remained heavy with the belief that this was the price necessary to defeat Horus and save humanity. Malkador, the ever-loyal advisor, felt the chill as he sensed what his friend had become. The Emperor had passed beyond the threshold, and the light of his humanity had all but flickered out. Malkador could do nothing but watch in helpless despair. It was then that the Emperor was confronted, not by his greatest foes, but by those who had once called him friend. Aulnius Persin, John Grammaticus, Litu, and Gravriel Loken. Perseus, undaunted, faced the Emperor and spoke of the past, reminding him of what he had been and what he had lost. The Emperor, lost in the madness of the warp, had not expected to encounter Perseus here, at this moment, at this place. Yet, in the face of his former friend, something stirred within him. Perseus spoke, or Persons, whatever his dumb name is. He's a stupid... he's one of those unkillable people, so he's useless anyways.
Perpetual. Aulnius Pius. He goes by different names too, which is kind of funny. That's why I was laughing, because it's like technically he does have a bunch of different names, even though you change the name every time you read it. And he's supposed to represent, again, Mark, you mentioned in the old lore where it was a custodian that confronts Horus and gets struck down, and then that kind of changed to be a space marine and then a guardsman, and now he kind of fulfills that role of that character in that like final battle. But I have all the same opinion too, that like he's a perpetual and there's a lot of garbage there that I'm not super thrilled with. But
like even again they flipped the script, like this guy was supposed to die, yet he's a perpetual and lives on forever. Like this changing character of the Emperor's defining moment or whatever, and he's like he didn't have to sacrifice for it. Stupid perpetual.
Yeah.
But anyways, in the brief moment of clarity, the Emperor hesitated. For all his strength, for all his power, he was still, in the end, a man, and so he relinquished the mantle of the Dark King, casting aside the decaying power he had become. Though the cost was heavy, a surge of power erupted, sweeping across Terra and the Vengeful Spirit, purging much of the warp's madness. But it was too late. The Emperor's humanity had been shattered, and the Dark King was never truly gone, only lying dormant, waiting for the next moment of weakness to rise once more. That's kind of the concept. When he came back from this, he was different as well, like mentally. He came back and he's seen the uselessness of this all. He became nihilistic in this moment. He broke his mind essentially because he kind of went through time, space to the end, to the beginning. Unraveled all the secrets of the real universe and came to that conclusion that it all needs to end, or it's all pointless, or it all will end even.
Yeah, it's that kind of finality to it. Like, you know what, just shut it all down. Let's just annihilate everything.
Yeah.
Which again speaks to that nihilism, destruction for the sake of destruction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I have all the same comments about, like being a perpetual kind of undermines the whole thing about that last guardsman position. It all goes back to like this concept of a Dark King. I'm not super into, but
I know a lot of people love it, but I'm just like, have you guys not heard of Malice? Is that the issue here?
Our Lord and Savior. Have you not heard of her?
Yeah, it is sort of the same nihilistic end, I guess.
End of all things.
I almost feel like they're just trying to bring a conclusion to the Emperor, like trying to finish his story somehow, which maybe isn't necessary, but yeah, to sort of transform him into this character.
Yeah,
and
more.
Yeah,
there is more on that train of thought too that I'll go into maybe towards the end as well.
Yeah, I had some more too, but I maybe wanted to save it for later. But yeah.
All right. Let's talk about some current beliefs. Though the Emperor's decision to turn away from the Abyss temporarily halted the rise of the Dark King, the ruinous powers know this is but a fleeting reprieve. Time in the realm of chaos does not flow as it does in the material universe. It is a twisted, mutable, and boundless. The Dark King's emergence, long foretold in whispers and visions, is merely a matter of time. For even as the Emperor shed his unholy power, in that moment of clarity, the servants of the Dark King already stir, and his dominion spreads through the warp, waiting for the inevitable moment of his ascent. So that kind of actually speaks to the point I was about to make, is the threat of the Dark King truly done away with? I saw online there was a kind of a debate going on because of the idea of like, well, there's prophecy involved now, so it has to happen, but then he turns away from it. So did he nullify the prophecy? Or does that leave room for the rise of the Dark King potentially in the future? And kind of also bring it back to the point of the Emperor, in order to banish the Dark King, he cuts off a piece of his own soul and like kind of sends it into the warp. So in theory, there is room for that to return in some capacity, whether it possesses someone or it manifests itself into a god or what. It's kind of left open-ended. So there's certainly room for it to be a kind of, like I said before, like that threat in the background that could potentially be picked up by any kind of storyline should they wish to.
Yeah.
And again, whether or not that's the Emperor somehow, his current state being in a state of decay. If he comes back, he's not going to come back as like a righteous god. He'll come back as the Dark King. Like really, he's feeding into the Dark King version of himself all these years.
Yeah.
But again, all that's also kind of speculation and like online debates, right? So the Dark King's presence is not just a future event. It is a shadow that lingers in the present, potentially woven into the fabric of the Immaterium. His followers, ever loyal, are scattered across the far reaches of existence, laying the groundwork for his eventual reign. The warp, ever hungry for power and corruption, yearns for the Dark King's return, and the ruinous powers who watch with glee know that sooner or later he will rise. The Emperor's moment of hesitation only postpones the inevitable. The Dark King's throne waits, cold and empty, for the day when the Emperor's soul is no longer strong enough to resist the pull of chaos, and he is claimed by the darkness he sought to deny. Though the Emperor believes the darkness has passed, the Dark King's servants already whisper his name, their eyes watching from the edges of the warp, waiting. The prophecy is clear. The Dark King will return. The only question is when. Again, yeah, just speaking to that idea of like this threat that still exists. The other interesting dynamic is I do believe, and I could be mistaken on this, is the Dark King is hated by chaos as well. Again, playing into that Malal role.
Yeah.
Where like he is the true destruction, the destruction of chaos as well as the material universe. So they definitely, like, he would still be their enemy, even though the Emperor would also be the evil Emperor. So like he would be chaos tainted, but also enemy of chaos, which again plays into that. Like I think this is GW's way of bringing the concept of Malal back.
Yeah, a little bit for sure. Feels that way.
Yeah.
The question of when he returns, like maybe we've done episodes about that kind of like maybe when he dies, what happens to his soul, then it'll fully go into the warp. That's some crazy thoughts for sure.
Yeah, and it plays against the concept of the Emperor being a god of order, or other. I again go back and listen to our Emperor episode where we delve into like those aspects. Of,
This
like,
is
was the Emperor a god?
This is a fun thought. Plain Jane, killer comment. Did he place himself on the golden throne to buy time / prevent the Dark King from rising? If he's immortal for 10,000 years, bye Dark King. What a concept.
Yeah.
Possibly. Like he was mortally wounded, and it also has a lot to do with, that. But yeah, still kind of a fun byproduct.
Yeah, or like not allowing himself to die also keeps the Dark King at bay, right? Because there's a chance if he resurrects, the Dark King will manifest or something to that effect.
Yeah. What if Big E is just a demon prince for Malice? The first demon prince on his way. Yeah, that's fun.
He'd be, that's crazy because he would be like so supremely powerful.
Yeah.
But that's in line with like Malice. Like, still kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and like the exact thing that the Emperor fought and didn't want was to become a chaos god or like this warp being, or like now he is one. Like, yeah, even Malice would laugh at that for sure.
All right, let's get into the Inquisition. Some factions within the Inquisition speculate that the Emperor is undergoing apotheosis, becoming a warp entity known as the Dark King or God Emperor. These beliefs are most commonly found among the radical elements of the Thorian and Horusian factions, though interpretations differ. Thorians believe that the Emperor's divine essence can be reborn in a physical vessel, often seeking powerful psykers or saints who could serve as his new incarnation. Some Thorians believe that the Emperor is already evolving into a warp god, guiding his followers towards a more direct and active role in shaping the Immaterium's destiny. Horusians take a more extreme approach, believing that the power of chaos itself could be harnessed to create a new supreme god of the order. Some Horusians speculate that the Emperor's growing warp presence could be refined into a weapon against the ruinous powers, effectively making him the fifth chaos god. Though one aligned with humanity, this belief is highly controversial, as it blurs the line between worshipping the Emperor and embracing chaos. That is kind of an interesting thought. Is that canon, or did you make that up in the notes, Mark?
No, that's canon. Yeah, there's a bunch of cool inquisitorial doctrines or whatever you'd want to call them.
Okay, yeah, that is that is interesting. Yeah. While these ideas are heretical to more Puritan factions like the Monodominants or the Amalathians, some radicals within the Inquisition secretly investigate whether the Emperor's growing presence in the warp signals his ascension as the Dark King, a being that could either save humanity or reshape it in ways beyond comprehension.
Whew.
Yeah, so the the Emperor becoming a chaos god.
Yeah, that's what everyone wants, it seems, eh? You know, that's
Yeah. My personal preference is the Emperor as a god of order rather than a god of oblivion, which is what the Dark King kind of represents. But
You're right.
there is a grimdark element to that fact of like I do like that uncertainty where maybe this is going to be our salvation or our ultimate damnation, right? Like I don't know. That sounds like 40K to me.
But like I don't know, like we just read previously in the notes, like just it's like he's fighting Horus, and then he finally after the battle with Horus, he takes this like Nietzschean turn and is like, no, screw this. I'm done with it. I'm ending everything. So that would make sense, like why he would become a chaos god and try to, you know, end everything in a violent storm of decay.
Yeah, I kind of like to think of him too as kind of like I mentioned before, it's like a black hole, just like this ultimate force that you can't escape and just grows and grows and consumes everything.
When I was looking at artwork for the thumbnail or whatever for the Emperor, the Dark King, black holes did keep coming up, which is I wonder if that's a very common thread with him that I'd never kind of read somewhere. Like, yeah, but it's an interesting thing. Like, black holes kept coming up.
Yeah. Like conceptually, he's a black hole for everything, like the
Yeah.
warp end for physical matter, right?
Yeah.
Purge in the comments says, "What if the Emperor is just the demon prince for Malice?" That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, we love it.
I mentioned that. Yeah.
Fucking love.
Yeah, I have to throw in a Star Wars association here just because it's us. But strong Darth Nihilus from Knights of the Old Republic too. Like he exists as like
Nihilus.
Yeah. He's just
like
an all-consuming like black hole that just sucks in all like the warp. He's like I was gonna say the god of hunger, but the Sith Lord of hunger. Supremely powerful, but like exactly he's that same kind of black hole.
His body, like his physical body, no longer exists. He's like trapped himself inside of his clothing, but he's not like he doesn't have physical form. He just
it's almost like a ring wraith.
Yeah, he consumes all life. Yeah,
hate incarnate type thing.
Yeah, nihilism incarnate. Sorry.
Nihilism, yes. Yeah.
Nihilism transcends hate. It's just ultimate.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's just hunger. It's just like destroy everything.
Cool.
Yeah.
At this part in the episode, we're going to jump to some speculation, some tales of the warp. You know, everything that we kind of mentioned is pretty canon for the Dark King. You know, there might have been a line here or there that I kind of flavored myself, but most of it was pretty bang on. But there's a lot that we don't know about it. You know, we've mentioned the servants. So let's kind of go through like demons, realms, what all that stuff could potentially look like in the future, and technically already does look like because of the warp. Let's start with his dominions, and that's like what gives him power. It seems like it is despair, decay, the end of all things, like destruction. Those are his realms. Some people were kind of thinking it is hope, but like I think it just doesn't work that way, man. Like,
yeah, well, I mean, that's where the big divide is, right? Like he's either a god of order and hope, or nihilism and decay and like ultimate destruction.
Yeah, like if
I'm the god of oblivion, because that sounds cool.
If the Emperor died, and in that exact moment, everyone who heard of his death were like, well, now he's becoming a god, and they believed in, they put it out there, and however that happened. That's like a very different birth story than what we have here.
They would also have to like spend quite a lot of time explaining like what his motivation would be to become a chaos god.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's just a little like it would be. I don't know how they, because you said like this Dark King concept is pretty new, so I don't know how exactly they're explaining that, but yeah, it does seem, the Emperor spent millennia on this project, and then all of a sudden he's just going to do like a hard pivot and just burn it all down. You got to really explain his motivations there for
Good
doing
luck.
that.
Explaining
Yeah,
his
like
motivations for anything.
desperation. I think maybe it was that. Like it was, this whole project, the culmination. Horus is like, this is the final moment. It's either this or death. Everything he's worked for either ends now, or he dives into the warp and gives up his soul and tries to hang on.
What about like an Oppenheimer kind of approach, Jordan, about like you created, you spent your life working on nuclear physics, and then like you create the nuclear bomb, and then there's almost a nihilistic realization at what you've created.
Well, Oppenheimer, after he created the nuclear bomb, became like a big non-proliferation activist.
Right. Exactly. Like he's undoing his life's work, essentially.
Right. Yeah.
The other thing I was going to mention is what if the Imperium as it is empowering the concept of the Dark King, because it is like that stagnation, that decline, like it's already happening. That's the thing no one realizes.
Yeah.
We're in it. This is it. Like
yeah, that's a fun one for sure. Yeah, what's more powerful of the motion going on in the Imperium, stagnation and decay, or hope and optimism? We know the answer to that. Yeah. We don't know what his mark is, if he has one. Maybe it'd be some type of Aquila variant, just because or lightning bolt maybe would be a better one, maybe for the Emperor.
A circle that represents a black hole. That seems to be a concept that keep coming back to you.
Sure. Okay.
Ouroboros. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely all for it. I just feel like there needs to be a tie into who he was of old, but maybe that's not, because that's the whole point of him, is he's
it's
going towards destruction. Like,
yeah,
he's not trying to maintain anything. He's not trying to hold on to nothing. So yeah,
like his old self is light, lightning, golden. The Dark King is like black, darkness, oblivion. Like it's a transition point from one to the other.
Okay, good point. So his mark, yeah, definitely black hole. His number, it could be a 1, just because
0
or a 0 was my other suggestion. Yeah, you break the system with that 0 apparently, because it doesn't exist or something.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah,
0 is not a number, but it's also a number.
What if he's 0-1? The whole universe is just a code of binaries, is it not?
He is everything but nothing.
Counter. His mark and number are the infinity symbol.
I was thinking that too.
But he doesn't want that though. That's the opposite of his goal.
Infinite
if it's
oblivion.
Entropy, it's I guess,
yeah. His color we don't know, but black and white, like Malice, kind of seem cool just because of the concept. It's not a color,
or just black. Dark King, it's just implied in the title.
Well, shit, Christian, you're right. Black. His philosophy, this is where it gets interesting. Like, we don't really know. Like, he wasn't really birthed, and no one really knows about him necessarily. Like, what would his followers want to do? They want to bring about the end of all things?
Yeah, so actually I was going to lean into that and be like, what if it's they're wanting to bring him forth, right? That's their whole purpose. They are that faction in the back corner trying to summon forth the Great Destroyer. I was going to argue, well, not argue, but potentially bring up the fact that like there was a time, yes, when Horus was also suspected to be a candidate for the Dark King as well. So what if there are other candidates too that they try to like bring forth?
Yeah, Samus was another one, the demon Samus.
Yeah, I have another opinion on Samus specifically, but let's suppose like there are other entities, like maybe if they can corrupt Gulliman or another powerful force in the galaxy. What if they try to push Abaddon onto the path of the Dark King? Or, like I said, alternatively, there is that piece of the Emperor's soul in the warp, and maybe they're just trying to bring it back out of the warp, right? It's like ocean time. you threw this part of his soul into the ocean, and now they're plumbing the depths of the ocean to summon it back, right? They're looking for the heart of the ocean from Titanic.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so basically these guys, that's kind of they think that when the Dark King comes back, the galaxy ends, and that's a good thing, I guess. Nihilistic philosophy.
I mean, it exists in real life.
Sure, for sure.
Make a faction out of it.
Yeah. The realm, we don't know, but we do know that when this kind of incident happened, when he went into the warp and sucked deep during the battle against Horus, this place in the warp was created, the Inevitable City. Whether this is actually like his realm or this is just a realm that was made, hard to say, man, but we'll tell you about it anyways. The Inevitable...
Sorry. You want me to go?
Yeah, go for it.
Right. The Inevitable City is a cursed place, a shifting nightmare adrift in the tides of the warp. It is neither fixed nor bound, existing beyond the constraints of time and space. An endless sprawl of madness and ruin. It first bled into reality during the dying moments of the Siege of Terra, a manifestation of the Chaos God's exaltation at Horus's ascension. It was not merely built, but born, woven from the torment and bloodshed of the war's final days, a city of endless spires and abyssal streets that did not stand apart from the carnage, it consumed it. The boundary between the material and immaterial crumbled, and those lost in the slaughter on both Terra and the Vengeful Spirit found themselves wandering its impossible corridors, swallowed whole by its shifting avenues of despair. Horus claimed it is his dominion, a grim reflection of what he would remake Terra into, a mockery of the Imperium he sought to shatter. Even the sanctum of the Imperial Palace could not hold against it, its sacred halls twisted into an extension of the city's endless, decaying expanse. There was no escape, no safety, only the certainty that Inevitable City would come for all in time.
Yeah. It doesn't... I guess the Inevitable City, just like the end of all things, will come. Sure.
Yeah, again, I just struggle with these concepts that they just kind of like, it feels forced. I feel like they forced a lot of these ideas to try and make this deeper than it was or is.
Well, it's just so interesting, man. This guy and Malice are pretty much the same. They're very similar. But when we were talking Malice, man, we were rambling for an hour and a half, and we get to this guy and we get complaints. Because, it does feel just like forced, and like that little bit of creative is not quite fully there. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. It feels like something's missing. An element is not there. And there are aspects, like I was just going off, like, the Imperium could be this like embodiment and kind of like, again, that's very grim dark, right? Where the Imperium itself is the realm of this Dark King, right? Like this is the outcome. But it's lacking something that I can't quite put my finger on.
Yeah. So yeah, we everyone in 40K is in the warp in a realm of the Dark King called the Imperium of Man. And it's just decaying, rotten empire, and yeah. So much meta, mucho meta, amigo. Let's talk about the rivalry. I think I know. I think he doesn't like everyone.
That's a good guess.
So the Dark King is a rival to all the Chaos Gods, sort of like Malal in a way, because his nature threatens their very existence. While Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh thrive on mortal emotions, conflict and excess, the Dark King represents despair, corruption, and the collapse of all meaning. His ascension would not just challenge their power, it would unravel the foundations of chaos itself, consuming their realms in slow, inevitable decay. The existing gods battle ceaselessly, but all would unite against the Dark King to prevent their own dissolution into the void. Interesting. So you think like I guess the Dark King sort of plays the long con a little bit. His inevitable city just slowly spreads out across the chaos realms and just it's like the Zerg creep in StarCraft. It just like spreads and you can't really stop it. It creeps, and I don't know.
I like.
I think
that
that's what they
thought.
were going for. But
Yeah.
Now, yeah, he's against all the gods. When we talk about preferred, maybe if Malice is a thing, maybe they would get along. But then we get back into that, like, well, that's not really like the point. It's supposed to be chaos. It's supposed to be no allies. It's supposed to be against itself, you know. So then, even
You know, it seems like the Dark King would like end 40K as an idea. Like,
yes,
we would have no more game, we would have no more story or books or any of the surrounding merchandise or anything like that. It would just be like, why even continue? The Dark King has now risen, and he is inevitable. He literally has the inevitable city. So why even continue with this? Whereas, yeah, you switch over to Malal, you could keep it going forever. Like, it can never end. Malal doesn't want it to all end. He wants it to keep going because in his mind, that just keeps the chaos going. As soon as things are getting too entropic, he's gonna inject some life in there so it stays alive a little longer, right? Like
cool.
he's gonna he's gonna shock the well, I forget what you call the things. You shock the heartbeat of the of the dead universe and make it come back to life for a little bit longer. You know?
Yeah.
Like that's his whole thing. But I don't know, the Dark King just seems to be like, I don't know, you gotta have some meaning or purpose.
I almost feel like they're the two opposites of like either like the Dark King is a decrease in entropy to like again that like heat death of the universe situation where there is nothingness, no more, whereas Malal represents an increase in entropy and just like more chaos added to the system, more energy to fuel the system. Like
Yeah.
they're very
Yeah,
they're
that's a great
similar
thing.
in so many ways, but they're like contradictory in a lot of ways too.
Yeah, totally.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Demons. I got an interesting thought here. Now, probably once again, he does have servants. Actually, they talk about his servants, and they talk about his servants like being active and stuff. The only servants I could possibly think of, and do you know what I'm going to say, Christian?
I don't know actually.
The Legion of the Damned, the fire guys, the bone and fire guys that appear in humanity's darkest moments and then disappear as quick as they can. And they're flaming with ethereal fire. And lots of people have called them the Emperor's like true angels or demons, potentially even. What do we think about this kind of direction?
So my only issue with them as manifestations of the Dark King specifically is that they come to save humanity, which is completely the opposite. If they showed up and just annihilate everything, that'd be a different story. But they don't. They come and save the Imperium. Usually, is when they emerge, right? Like your desperate last stand, and all of a sudden, these figures emerge from warp fire, and and of course, they have the very undead theme, right? But
yeah, you poked the big old fucking hole in that water balloon for me there. You're right. Yeah, no, I'm glad you did. But
yeah, I do. Again, like if you envision the Emperor as a god of order, and he's like on the way of ascension, and like you could see that these beings would be his demon host army.
Yeah,
but I can't see it in the other direction. From that online discussion though that I was talking about earlier, one thing that did come up was actually, and kind of to the point you kept making about Samus. So the demon Samus appears quite a bit in the Horus Heresy, and he's kind of a weird one because he doesn't seem aligned to any of the gods. He is the first demon we encounter. He appears, I believe, in the very first book. Jordan, if you want to jog my memory on that, yeah.
With,
and he, like I said, he pops up periodically, so he's pretty prominent as a figure. So kind of in that online debate, someone mentioned that Samus could be a herald of the Dark King. And even if you read through the quotes, even as far back as the first book, he says things like, I am the end of all things. He has this like phrase that he uses repeatedly.
He appears in the second book too, I believe.
Yeah, again, he's a recurring character. He appears a few times throughout it. And again, like it's hard to he doesn't quite fit how other demons operate, and he doesn't quite seem to have an alignment. Like, is he a Nurgle demon? Is he a Khorne demon? so that's what someone was saying online there, was that he could be the herald of the Dark King, and like as the
That's
events of
cool.
the Horus Heresy were beginning, he was becoming more powerful and like making his appearance known. But with this ultimate end of the Dark King, that he kind of just vanishes with the potentiality of what the Dark King could have been.
That's fun.
Yeah, so I don't hate that for sure.
That's
I
a
think,
good idea. Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
But that would be like one demon that's his herald.
Yeah.
Whether or not there would be other demons that would manifest after the fact, I don't think so, because again, he's the god of oblivion. Like his whole point is unexisting everything.
But he definitely does have demons, unlike Malice, where it's more canon likely he doesn't. The Dark King has them. Like the other Chaos gods see his servants walking around doing things.
Are those servants demons, or are they people who are pushing a nihilistic aim?
Oh, that's a good question. Matt, when I read it, and I could be wrong, it definitely seemed more like warp related.
Okay.
Like oh yeah, because it also mentioned him having a realm and stuff. But then we could go back to, well, maybe that's the Imperium and its decaying state, and that's the realm. So hard to say.
And all its demons are actually just the people that inhabit it.
Yeah.
Also, that goes for the Eternal City or Endless City or whatever you call it. Like as people die, they go into that place, and they become his demons. I don't know. I'm just spitballing at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't know too much, and maybe GW is in this weird spot of never finalizing something. So it's like, okay, there's a bunch of options they could go from here. They've kind of set this up, but then they retconned a bunch of old stuff. And now in 20 years, we'll get kind of the conclusion of these storylines, but then they'll retcon 20-year-old storylines that are no longer cool. We almost find ourselves in this vicious cycle of, we don't get the end where we got this cool new concept of the Dark King, but ultimately it was meaningless. They advance, they don't advance.
But isn't that the point, Mark, of the Dark King, is meaninglessness?
Kind of the whole point.
In a meta way. Your nihilism towards GW is the achievement of what the Dark King wanted all along.
God damn it. Right into their trap the whole time.
Right.
Fuck.
Walked right into it.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've always agreed with you guys. I didn't like this concept when I heard about it when this book first kind of came out. Like, I think there's a lot cooler ways to do the Emperor as a Chaos God, and it's definitely to not call him the fifth Chaos God and to try to give him this like pseudo Malice position. It's definitely not the way to go.
I don't hate the idea though of turning the Emperor into a Chaos God. I'm not sure. Yeah, like with the Dark King itself as a concept, I'm not sure like turning him into that is the direction I would go with it. But like I don't hate the idea. I think it almost seems like if you are going to conclude the Emperor's story, like that's the direction you'd go, is you take him.
We don't want to conclude stories though, because this is the problem. Yeah, they write, but then they write without concluding, but they try to write something interesting, but then you're just
it's kind of a catch-22. Like you can't end it, but you also can't tell a full story. But then why are you telling stories in a thing that should be a setting rather than a story to begin with? Like, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot from the outset.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Malal makes a lot more sense in the wider, even in just the gaming of it, right? Like you can just keep gaming and making your own scenarios and whatnot. Whereas, like the Dark King does feel like there's a finality coming to it.
Yeah.
And that he consumes everything eventually.
Yeah. I mean, you could always have it, again, hanging in the background as this like existential threat that you can always play towards. Like his servants have suddenly, done this.
Yeah, I know.
The same way they kind of do with Abaddon before they did like the final Black Crusade, right? Like,
sure,
something's coming, but you never quite get there.
Yeah.
But it's just not my favorite concept altogether. I think there's elements of it that are pretty okay. I think it could be executed better.
Sorry, Jordan, go.
I was sort of wondering like what would happen with like the imperial cultists and whatnot that like follow the emperor if they learn that he's become the Dark King. Are they going to follow him down the path of the Dark King, or are they going to like
Rebel
continue
against the emperor.
deny that that's really the emperor, and they're gonna continue to be like, no, that we must spread the goodness of the emperor across the entire galaxy and eliminate Xenos and blah blah blah.
Man, it's interesting. Like, so they rebel. They find out. They're like, no, we don't want to worship the Dark King. We don't want to serve this god of ultimate entropy. Let's revolt and destroy a bunch of stuff. And now they start destroying a bunch of stuff, and that kind of praises the Dark King and helps him out. So either you worship him and help him out, or you don't, and you kind of smash these systems that have kind of been developed to give him the power that he's getting. But then you help him out, and you bring the end of everything quicker.
Yeah,
It's nice that way with these gods. I guess that's why they say damned if you do, damned if you don't, eh?
That's the slogan for the Dark King.
Yeah.
Plain Jane in the comments says, sounds like GW is digging a hole on this one. Yeah, I think we kind of all say the same. And then he also says, I guess with a name like Plain Jane, maybe a woman, turning him into a chaos god is kind of grimdark.
Women don't listen to this.
I like the vibe of making him everything he was attempting to prevent, being fueled by the people he was attempting to protect from the warp. I do like that kind of element of it. But anytime you have the Emperor kind of existing in this nightmare world of, of contradiction, of like everything he wanted to do kind of backfired, like he's immortal but is also forever undead on his golden throne. Like there's a lot of that in elements of the Emperor, and I do agree with you on that front. But what kind of chaos god is he, I think, is the major question if we go down that road. And also leaving him in limbo does free you of having to conclude things.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's that. 2 paragraphs of information 2 hours later. Not too shabby. I love this episode, man. What a fun little concept. We'll move on though. I think Jordan, you got a rant for us. You got a 40K rant, brewing. And since we've mentioned the Horus Heresy books, and since this whole Dark King is a Horus Heresy book, lay your rant on us, my boy.
Okay, here we go. A little pet peeve of mine. So in the second book, False Gods, the librarium in the Vengeful Spirit, which is Horus's flagship, the librarium gets burned and a bunch of books ultimately get destroyed and are lost to the annals of history. Now, I cannot for the life of me figure out how they have not made digitized copies of all of their like they literally say in the next book that these copies are like erased from history. And I'm like, what? In 40K, like you have the most like advanced genetically modified superhumans ever to exist, and like you have ships that are the size of cities, and you can't just make digital copies of your library.
No, and I'll tell you why, Jordan. Because they lost the STC for the Dewey Decimal System. So they can't. They can't take it to that step. They can't organize it, and without organization, you're not going to digitize it.
Okay, Jack says he can answer this, so I don't know.
Give him a minute. Maybe he's typing out this like multi-paragraph response.
He could always call in too and tell us what his answer is.
Jordan, something you mentioned too, we kind of had this discussion in the pre-show, was like how much of those books maybe had some kind of warp taint or something that prevents it from being digitized. That would be true for some books, probably not many in a loyalist library.
Yeah, like not all. So like obviously like Kirill Cinderman picks up a book and opens it up, and like warp entities start popping out. And also I think it's Torgadon. He opens the book and he has like it's not Torgadon, it's Garviel Loken. He opens up a book and then he has like a vision, right?
Yeah.
Of
Yeah,
the-
it's kind
of
of hard to capture that on a PDF file.
Yeah. So obviously, like it's very fantasy, right? Like they are imbued with magical powers. These items, like physical items.
Yeah.
So you obviously like, but yeah, like you're saying, these items are like forbidden. Like, so you're not going to have a ton of them around. They're like hidden, like in these back shelves that are dark and full of dust, and no one knows about them except for a very select few people, right? Like the vast majority of your books in these libraries should just be like typical stuff that you could read. And yeah,
I do like it's obviously like a metaphor for like the burning of the Library of Alexandria and like all that lost knowledge. But yeah, it's if you're gonna do something like that, you kind of have to.
But also like putting a library of that import, not leaving it on Terra, but like putting it on your frontline ship in this like
a warship.
Like, just
listen, Jordan, you're building your ships to look like cathedrals, okay? There's not a lot of like rationality we're working with here.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Anyway,
suspension of disbelief, Jordan.
I like that rant, Jordan. Way back, I think one of our very first bonus episodes was a rant from you, and I forget what we were ranting about, but yeah.
I'd like to go back and listen because I don't remember either.
Yeah.
You're just gonna piss yourself off all over it.
Probably.
Well, fun episode. No more call-ins, I think. It's getting late, but lots of fun. And I don't want to hear about the Dark King no more. I never want to hear about him again. I think we all clarified we want Malice and Malal, and the only time we ever want to hear the Dark King is if it's in reference to him being a demon prince for Malal. Other than that, get fucked, I think.
Here.
I think there's a very good chance that GW's just never going to bring it up again because they keep doing that recently.
Yeah.
Like they just introduce concepts and then just drop it like immediately. And it's like, why did you even bother?
Yeah, cool.
We'll see.
Cool. Well, thanks everyone for listening. If you want to listen to more, you can come on over to the Lorehammer Listener Lore podcast where we read your homebrewed lore. Maybe you can write a story about Christian, the sixth chaos god. How was he birthed? Is his power hatred like you hating an object so much?
No, he's actually.
I actually feed off of your hatred. It makes me more powerful. I'm ascending.
Yeah. His sacred number is the Puma because chaos and fuck you doesn't need to make sense.
I was gonna say my sacred number is 69, but okay.
You've never done that in your life. Come on.
Does it count if it was with friends, Mark?
It does, but not in the way that you would want.
All right. Yeah, and if you like to know more about Darth Nihilus, come over and join us at the Star Wars podcast where we talk about Star Wars. That's Jordan and my other side project. And yeah.
Nice. And Pokélore, because why the fuck not? Why can a man not have 8 podcasts, Christian? Why?
I don't know. That's why I'm having all the podcasts.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you like Pokemon, come check out our new side project, the Pokélore podcast.
Yeah, very cool. I love that. Well, it was fun, boys, talking to you. It's funny that we've been talking about the same topic for 20 years, and I still want to do it next week. Wow. Ain't that some shit? All right, everyone. Adios. See you on the next one.
See ya.